Morning, good morning, good morning. All right. With the help of Hashem, we are learning Pesachim Daf Yud Zayin. We are again dedicating this class L'Refuah Shlema to Chaim Ben Rachel, Kevan's brother. May he indeed have a Refuah Shlema. Amen. We are continuing a whole daf about mashkin. You know, when the Rebbe made the takana that people 40 and under should not have more than 4 l'chaims. Here you go. We had a little bit of mashkin on daf Tez Vav, daf Tez Zayin. Today, daf Yud Zayin. And God willing, tomorrow, daf Yud Ches. Here we have the 4 dafim that speak about mashkin. We're going to take off and repeat the machloikis. We're going to continue with the machloikis Rav and Shmuel concerning the quiz that the Chagai gave the Kohanim, as we are learning really a few psukim today. From the second chapter, the whole Chagai has 2 prakim, but in the second chapter, we began yesterday Pasuk Yud Beis, one question, the first question that Chagai asked the Kohanim, and there is a machlokes between Rav and Shmuel whether the answer that the Kohanim gave him, which is it's not Tameh, we'll repeat the question in a moment, whether that was a correct answer or whether they made a mistake. Rav says they made a mistake and Shmuel says they gave the correct answer. We're going to come back to the testimony that we learned yesterday from Yosi ben Yoezer, that he says that either mashkin base mit b'chaya are dachen or mashkin base mat b'chaya dachen. We're going to go back to that. We're going to see how that argument is going to have to correlate with the first argument between Rav and Shmuel, whether the answer was correct or not. We're going to refer back to the Brais on Daf Tez Zayin, explaining better the sheet of Rab Shimon. Rab Shimon and Rab Yosi were the ones that said that whether mashkin can be metama achedim midoirais or midrabanan, it depends. Achedim being oichlin doiraisa. So if there's a suffix tameim, whether mashkin can be metama kalim, they held. We're going to focus more on Rabbi Shimon holds. That is only midrabanans. If there's a suffix, it's tahoiden. We will also speak about the shita of Rabbi Yehuda, also on the Brais on Daf Tez Zayin, who Rabbi Yehuda says that lakoil tamei. He sounds to be the one that's the most machmer. No, it's not only our mashkin themselves tamei, but the power that mashkin have latame achedim is midoiraisa, whether oichlin, whether kalim, and therefore when there's a suffix, you have to be suffix doiraisa lochumra. And the Gemara is going to show how Rabbi Yehuda changed his position. We're going to learn about a heker that the Chachamim gave, that when a keli acquires tuma only on the Rabbanan level, in order for people to remember that's a Rabbanan level, in one area, they did something very unusual. Part of the keli is tummy, part of the keli is stud, and that will remind people that the tumah is only a tumah d'Rabbanan, and it is very important to know whether the tumah that a keli is passing over to foods is doiraisa or d'Rabbanan, because when truma is tamei, when kachim is tamei, they are to be burnt. When truma or kachim are not tamei, they may not be burnt. So therefore, if truma or kachim are only tamei midrabanan, appreciate what's happening, there's really nothing you can do. You can't eat it because we abide by rabbinic law. You can't burn it because mido eiraisa, they are not tamei. Mido eiraisa, you have to guard them from getting destroyed. So you have this unique din that you have to wait, you have to leave them to decay, but you have to remember that the tumah is only midrabanan, and God willing, if we'll have time, we will start to speak a little bit at the bottom of Daf Yud Zayin Amud Beis, going into the top of Daf Yud Ches, about the unique paradox that we find on the mechatos, the waters in which the ashes of the paraduma is mixed into, that yes, when it's being sprinkled on those who are tamei, it purifies them even from the worst tumah tamei meis. But stam, if you touch them, they themselves have a status of an av. Can you imagine? And we're going to learn about a very unique scenario where a cow drank up some of the mechatos. Moededik. Now, really, any living being other than a yid, mido oiraisa, can never become tamei. So just because the mechatos has a din of an av and the cow consumed it, so what? The cow was alive. But if the cow died within 24 hours, which means that those liquids are still in the innards, are in the intestines of the cow, now the question is, will those waters now be matama the cow? Okay, chavre. So first we'll make a lachaim on mashkin over here. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu malachenu b'shakol nivudvari.
Amen.
And here we go back again. Chagai and the other Nevi'im had the tremendous task of inspiring the relatively small amount of Jews who went up in the beginning of Zman Bayesheni to build the second Beis HaMikdash. Chagai wants to make sure that we remember the dinim of Tum and Tara. And let's repeat what happened. Just I'm quoting the pasuk. So guys, it's Chagai Pedig Beis. Now it's pasuk Yud Beis. And I'm just
Rabbi, which daf are we on?
We are daf Yud Zayin. Daf Yud. I'm going back to daf Tez Zayin on the Beis in the bottom, just quoting the pasuk. He asks them that if there is, as we explained the pasuk, it's not written explicitly, a kohen that has the Sar Kodesh. The Sar Kodesh is a euphemism. He has sheretz meat. That's how we learned. Biknaf bigdoi, there's a piece of dead sheretz in his garment, and v'nage biknafai, and the garment, which means, according to the way we're learning now, the sheretz touches first lechem, which means since the sheretz is an av, the lechem l'chu'ura becomes an ishoy. Then the lechem touches nazid stew. Stew is a sheni. Then the stew touches yayin. Yayin is a shlishi. Then the yayin touches either oil or something else, something edible. But we're going to stay focused on the oil. And his question was regarding the oil. That's the last line. Ha yigdash. Now, being that we did not practice, we didn't have a Beis HaMikdash for 70 years. So yeah, we had truma, but we didn't practice the dinim of truma and tara by kachim. And other than kachim, even truma, that's even more susceptible than chulin, the end of the line by truma is a shlishi. So the shemen is a revi. So it sounds like that's the way we learned, and that's the way Rav learns. When they asked him, hayigdash, is the oil tameh on a revi? And they told him, loy. No. So let's start, guys, 3 lines now at the end of the 3rd line from the top of the Amid. This is mamish great. Gufa. Rav Amar. Rav says that when they answered loy, or we have in the parentheses, loy yigdash, then ishtabish. They made a mistake. Ishtabish kahana, the kahana made a mistake. Shmuel Amar lo ishtabish kahana. Now let's explain. Rav Amar ishtabish kahana farvos, because the question that Chagai asked of them was Revi ba'kodesh ba'aminayu. Is there a Revi? You know, he asked them about the status of the shemen and Amru lei, and they told Chagai tahor, and now they're wrong. They're wrong because there is a Revi ba'kodesh. Gabriel pointed out yesterday something great. The concept that the holier something is, the more susceptible it is to Tuma, which is Takawai. By Chulin, the end of the line is Sheni. Truma can even become a Shlishi. Kachim can even become a Revi. So Lechem is like something basic. What Nazit represents, I don't know. But we know that Pnimius HaTorah sometimes is represented by Yayin, Yeina Shel Torah. Then we have sometimes oil representing Pnimius HaTorah. And the Rebbe points out that oil represents the Raiva Deraiven. So it's amazing that in the example that he asked them, the latter items that are becoming tummy on a lower level because they are even loftier, and that's the rule, the holier something is, the more sensitive it is, it can even become tummy on this latter number. So it's amazing that Yayin is 3, it's beautiful. And Shemen can even become number 4. That's the cloud. The holier something is, the more susceptible it is to tumah. The deeper something is, the more sensitive it's coming back over here. So that's Pashat. That's how we learned yesterday. Now let's begin. Shmuel Amar, Shmuel says, Loi ishtabish kahana, they made no mistake. You know why? Because the quiz, the bechina that we have in Pasuk Yud Beis, which is the Pasuk that we read, was not whether kachim can become a revi. There the question is whether kachim can become a chamishi. And no, kachim cannot become a chamishi. Now we'll have to read the Pasuk again. What's the oil, according to Shmuel, was already the 5th. Because Chamishi ba'kodesh ba'aminayu, and they correctly answered that Torah, because there is no Chamishi ba'kodesh. We mentioned that the mechatos, that's not called kachim. That is the only article that if a kachim on a revi touches the mechatos, it invalidates it, but that wasn't the question. Now says the Gemara like this: Bishlam Rav Gavaldik. Read the pasuk; it fits. Haynu d'chsiv. There are 4 items mentioned. You are beginning with the sheretz. The sheretz is an av. The first thing the sheretz touches was the lechem. So lechem is an ishon. You have lechem. The lechem then touched the nazir, the stew, right? Maybe the fact that there is some more water mixed in. Water is alma discasia. That makes the lechem, that makes the stew, so to say, more lofty than just a simple bread, even though bread also is made out of flour and water. But invited yayin, number 3, shem and oil. It worked. But Elul Shmuel, Chamisha Minale, where do you find in the pasuk that the Kahanim were, that Chage was asking about a Chamishi? You don't have a Chamishi. There's only 4 steps. So answers the Gemara, answer Shmuel. Miksiv the Naga Kim Nafai, his garment corner touches lechem. The garment is referring to the sheretz. It doesn't say that. It says Vinaga Biknafai. The limit is from the letter base with his beged's corner. With his beged's corner means with that which touched the beged's corner touched the lechem. So yes, there was a sheretz. Something that's not mentioned touched the sheretz. What is that something? A rishon. Then that touched lechem. So when you hit the lechem is already a sheni. So lechem is a sheni. So the nazir is a shlishi. The yayin taka they knew becomes a revi, indeed. But yayin is only puzzle. It's tamei. It's invalid, but it cannot be mitamei. So therefore, the shemen or the kol machol indeed did not become a chamishi. In other words, bameh shenaga biknafei. So guys, we have a machlekes, Rav and Shmuel. Now let's go on. The Gemara is going to be fair. We're going to have one question against Rav that will be answered. And then there'll be another question against Shmuel that will likely be answered. Everyone will stand the ground. The first kasha is against Rav. Rav says that he inquired about a Revi and they failed the test. Toshima, he asked them one more quiz. It was a bechina with 2 questions. Question number 1 is pasuk yud beis. Question number 2 that we're learning now is pasuk yud gimel. Pedig beis pasuk yud gimel. Toshima, vayomer chagai. Im yigat tmei nefesh, what will happen if a tmei nefesh, what's a tmei nefesh? Tmei nefesh is a person who's living that had contact with a corpse. A corpse is an avi avois. A tmei nefesh is also an av, right? Similar to a sheretz. Im yigat tmei nefesh bechol ela. In the same scenario, ha yitma, again, l'choira, ha yitma means will the final item, will the oil become tamei? And here the Kahanim said, Yitma, here Ya'ol become Tamei. So now the Gemara says, Bishleim el Shmuel, the Kahanim knew the halachis. Midahacha lo yishtabish, Hassan nama lo yishtabish. No one says that in the Pasuk Yud Gimel they failed the test. Now obviously, guys, we're going to come to a second. Obviously, according to Shmuel, there was never a Chamishi B'Kodesh. So in the second Pasuk, the Shemen was a Revi. In other words, in the first pasuk, it was biknafai, the base. So by the time you hit the shemen, you're already the 5th remove. And in pasuk yud gimel, it was the tmei nefesh touched the lechem directly. And they knew the dinim. You know, when people know, they know. So they knew the answer here, they knew the answer there. But according to Rav, if in both psukim, in both times, the shemen was revi'i, if they didn't know that shemen can become a revi, in other words, they didn't know that by kachim it even goes down until a revi. So Mishnah hacha in the pasuk yud beis, where it was the origin came from a sheretz, that the ishtabesh they didn't know, but they forgot that rule. They forgot the rule that kachim can even become a revi. So Mishnah hacha, what, just because it began with a tmei nefesh, or over here the lo ishtabesh, both a revi. Did they know there's a revi about kodesh or not? The Gemara says, I'll give you 2 answers. Amar Rav Nachman, answer number 1. Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Rav Baravua. Listen here, my friends. Bikiyim hein betumas meis. Yeah, the Kahanim knew that there is a concept of Revi B'Kodesh. They didn't remember that it makes no difference whether the Tumah begins from a Tmei Nefesh or whether it begins from a Sheretz. They thought, Tmei Nefesh. B'chal Kahanim, guys, Kahanim are not obligated not to become Tummy from a Sheretz, just to know that. The whole Isur of Parshas Emoid is that they may not get near corpse tumah. So they knew, corpse tumah is something that is a lot of koyach. They remembered Tamei Meis. They knew that if something begins with Tamei Meis, it can go down up until N, including a Revi B'Kodesh, but the Ein Bekin, Ein Betumas Neretz. Yeah, so they got a Bechina, and today you would get a 50 mark, 50 out of 100. But it makes sense. Ravina says, no, you don't understand the question. Over there, pasuk yud beis, like we said it, according to Rav, sheretz touched the lechem, touched the nazir, touched the yayin, touched the shemen is a revi. In pasuk yud gimel, What happened was hachesh shlishi gavaldik, that not that someone who touched the corpse touched the lechem. No, the corpse touched the lechem. I know I'm wording it funny. The corpse doesn't move. The lechem touched the corpse. The lechem touched the corpse. So now let's make the cheshbon. A corpse, a mace, is an aviyah voice. If the lechem touched the corpse, what's the lechem? The lechem is an av. The lechem is an av. So then the nazid is the rishon. So then the yayin is a sheni. And here the shemen is only a shlishi. It's gavaldik. You know, when he saw that they forgot that kachim can become a revi, he wanted to see, do they at least remember that at least a shlishi, like truma, that they remembered. The kid said one way or the other, Rav stands his ground. Second wide line. Now the Gemara is going to ask a kasha on Shita Shmuel. Tashima. So he spoke pasuk Yud Beis. Question number one. According to Shmuel, they passed the test. Pasuk Yud Gimel. According to everyone, they passed the test. And now the next pasuk, this is pasuk Yud Daled, Chagai now reacts. Vayam Chagai vayomer. After he hears them answering both questions, Kein ha'amazem. So is this people. V'chein ha'goyazem. So is this nation. Lefanai, in front of me meaning in front of God. Ne'um Hashem, says God Almighty. Now here again, the vav on the vig goymer is essential, because to appreciate what's going to happen now, Chagai continued. I'm just going to read out. Chagai says, "V'chein kol ma'aseh yedeim," that everything that the people will do, v'asher yakrivu sham, and everything that will be offered in the second temple, tamei hu oy gewalt. Everything now that you guys are doing is going to become tamei. So asks the Gemara this kasha now on Shmuel. Bishlem, according to Rav. If you get a quiz, guys, if you get a bechin, if you get a test, and there's two kashas, two questions, and you get only one right, what number do you give? You're a teacher, Rabbi Chen. You get 50. If a student gets 50 out of 100, that's called they failed, right? I think the number here is 65. That's a heilige number. Oh, so it makes sense. When he saw that they're only 50% knowledgeable, so it makes sense. So he tells them, guys, whatever you guys are doing now is not good. Tamei. But according to Shmuel, if you have a student that gets 100 out of 100, by me, it's called a matsuyan. Gavaldik, you're outstanding. So they knew the dinim. So am I tamei? So why is he saying that everything you're doing will become tamei? So answer Shmuel, you have to know how to read a pasuk. This is not a statement. This is a rhetorical statement. This is bitmiya, right? Itamuya kometama. In other words, you guys are so good. So now I can tell you that anything that the karbanis that you'll bring, will it be tamei? Of course not. You guys know the dinim. No. Says the Gemara, doesn't fit. If all he wanted to say was a rhetorical statement that nothing you're doing is tamei, he wouldn't have also said v'chein kol masa yadeim. Mashma, he's making a statement that everything you guys are going to do will be tamei. But why? They knew they answered all the questions correctly. So that he was not making a statement about what happened right now. Because he saw, he was a Navi Chagai, that in the future, not these Kohanim, Bisman Bayesheni, there's going to be corruption in their Masa Yadayim. That's the words, Kol Masa Yadayim. So therefore, Mala Aleim HaKosav Ke'ilu Ikriva B'Tumah, that Chagai was telling the Kohanim that when Kohanim behave corruptly, not in the laws of Tumah and Tara. Kohanim were always very careful in the laws of Tumah and Tara. Until now, we see that in any given group, people are medagdik in one area of mitzvahs, and the other areas lav dafka. Kohanim, for them, what was heilig was Tumah and Tara. So Chagai is telling them that when your Masa Yadayim in other areas are corrupt, then your karbanos will be as if it is tamei. We got to keep Yiddishkeit, all of Yiddishkeit, not the part that you are accustomed to, and the other part we cannot prioritize based on our own Marashkeit and our own human priorities. Okay, now guys, now that we have a machlekes Rav, it's beautiful this Gemara. We have a machlekes Rav and Shmuel. Now we're going to have another machlekes between Rav and Levi. And then we're going to make a shidduch between these two arguments together. Now we have to go back to Daf Tezayin. And the rest of the Daf is mamish. It's going to go back to the Braisa that we had on the top of Tezayin. And the Sugi began just pointing out Machlokes Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yosi, whether there is Tumas Mashkin Latama Achedim, whether that is Doirais or Darabana. But over there, we brought down we brought down the shita of Rabbi Lazar. Do you remember that? Rabbi Lazar held like Rabbi Meir. Problem is that even though Rav Meir is the lenient one, he holds that mashke letamei acherim is only midrabanan, but Rav Meir clearly holds that the mashkin themselves becomes tamei on a deraisa level, which is why when you have a suffix whether mashkin became tamei or not, as we explained, this is a case where you don't apply the rishus hayachad rishus harabim. It's inapplicable for whatever reason. Here we have to go back to the rule deraisa or derabanan. Mashkin, according to Rav Meir, that becomes Tomei Doiraisa. So when you have a doubt, Sofik Doiraisa, you're Machmer. V'chein, Rabbi Lazar said Kidvarav. That led us into the Rabbi Yossi ben Yoyezer. Rabbi Yossi ben Yoyezer had two traditions that he shared with us. One was regarding a grasshopper. That grasshopper called an ayo. Oh, that's Dochan, that's Tohar. Then he said the statement, and this latter statement is a machlekes in between Rav and Shmuel. Gufem, Rav learned that the second statement of Rabbi Yossi ben Yoyezer was mashke beis mit bechayim. First of all, there's a chidik under the mem, because between a dalad and a tes, it's hard to hear, and then it's a tes. Mit bechayim means the liquids in the butchering place. We are speaking about the tzvain hamizbeach, where they used to dismember and prepare the animal, whatever needs to be put on the mizbeach, to go on the mizbeach, the other parts to be given to the kahanim, to take off the hides. There is blood, and there's also water. That's the mashke beis mitbachai, that he said that the water and the blood, that was the whole thing we learned yesterday, and the premise was anything that's tamei on a doiraisa level, there'll be no difference between the Beis HaMikdash and outside the Beis HaMikdash. But anything that's only tamei on a rabbinic level, the Chachamim not wanting for there to be an addition of tumah in the Beis HaMikdash, they said that which is midrabanan won't be metami, will be dacham. But that was the version of Rav. Levi had a greater statement made by Yossi ben Yoyezer, that he said not only is the water and the blood in the Beis HaMikdash dachan, but he said mashki beis mad bechayim, with a patach under the mem, with a dalet, even the liquids that are brought on the altar. So not only the water and the blood, now what goes on the altar? The wine and the oil. That in the Beis HaMikdash, they remain tahar. Now let's be meshadech this statement, this machloikis, Rav and Levi. Let's come back to Chagai. And also not just coming back to Chagai.
Rabbi, does Yossi ben Yoyezer have to hold like Chagai?
No.
Or can they disagree?
We're going to see in a moment. Let's go through the sugya. But now you're chap already that these two arguments overlap. Don't forget, what was the quiz? It was about yain, it was about shemen. Right? We even spoke about that. Yes, no, it's if Yossi ben Yoyezer is saying that the mashkin base mad bechaya is dachan. Well, if they gave a right answer, they said loy is good. You see, they overlap. I'm going to go through all of the steps, how everything has to fit together. Moiridik. So the Gemara begins like this. Lelevi base mad bechayim. Hanicha, if Levi holds like Shmuel, what did Shmuel say? That the Kehanim make no mistake. The Omar, Dachan milatame acherim, right? I'm sorry, there's another machlekes. Okay, guys, there's another machlekes. What was the other machlekes? We're going to put everything together. The other machlekes is, what does dachan mean? Remember that? Does dachan mean that they are unable to impart tumah? Or does dachan mean that they themselves are not tamei? That's what we had on Daf Tezayin. Gavaldik. So according to Shmuel, that says on Daf Tezayin, that when Yossi ben Yoyezer said dachan, all he meant was dachan milatame tumas acherim, abel tumas atzman yesh lahem. And why did Shmuel say that? Because Shmuel holds that mashkin themselves, right, like Rabbi Meir, is tamei d'oraisa. Anything that's tamei on a level d'oraisa, you can't be lenient in the Beis HaMikdash. God's laws don't change. It's all the same. So now, Mishkachas la b'nagi kula b'rishen. Oh, look inside Chevre Rashi, 4 lines under the Gemara. Mishkachas la hay dechsiv. We're focusing now on pasuk Yud Gimel, on the second quiz, when it says im yiga t'mei nefesh b'chol eila, and they responded on the second question that we learned today. Yes, yitma. Everyone agrees they gave the right answer. What's yitma? Hold on. If mashkin in the Beis HaMikdash, according to Levi, even wine and oil cannot impart tumah, So when the wine touched the oil, why would the oil be tummy? You see that kasha doesn't work. Doesn't work. So says that it must be that he understood Pasuk Yud Gimel. It wasn't that the Tmei Mace touched the lechem and then the lechem touched the nazir and then the nazir touched the yain. No. That the source of Tumah of Pasuk Yud Gimel, which is Tmei Mace, touched lechem, or the Tmei Mace touched the nazir, or it touched the yain. Beautiful. Or it touched the shemen. And they answered Yigdash. And there was a chiddush in that, because even though Mashkin Beis Mad Bechaya cannot impart Tumah, but according to Shmuel, they can acquire Tumah. So they became Yigdash, they became Tamei. We call it puzzle, but in general, you can also say they became Tamei. The Chulu Nagaberishain, the Lava Sidra Kama Nakar. It wasn't that one touched the other, which then touched the other. And therefore, so that's a good answer. Furthermore, V'lo Yishtabish Kahani. Because in the first pasuk, even according to Shmuel, there was no mistake in the first pasuk Yud Beis. The question was al haseder, and what did the Kahanim answer? That the oil is not tamei. Why is the oil not tamei? Tell you why. Because yayin, according to Shmuel, cannot be mitamei anything in the Beis Hamikdash. Tumas mashkin l'tamei acherim is midrabanan. That was suspended in the Beis Hamikdash. That doesn't only go to water and blood; it goes to wine and oil. If Levi holds like Shmuel, who said both Pasuk Yud Beis, the Kahanim gave the right answer, and in Pasuk Yud Gimel they gave the right answer. So all we have to tweak is that in Pasuk Yud Gimel, it wasn't that one touched the other. We didn't go al seder, but the Tmei Meis directly touched the wine, and the Tmei Meis directly touched the oil, and they said Taka Tamei.
Rabbi,
Yes.
According to this,
Yes.
do we have to come on to the answer that we said before for Shmuel about the corner of the beged being in between the sherets? You could just say it was tahar because the wine touched the oil, and it can't be.
That's exactly what the Gemara is saying. That's exactly what the Gemara is saying. Okay, good. So now, let me just make sure I don't skip any lines over here. We did that already twice. So Nachamol, Lalechi Honichas like Shmuel, Dachem El Tamtum Zacherim Matum Zachayesh Mishkachas Law, the Nagi Kulabedishan. That's the new tweaking that on Pasuk Yud Gimel. In Pasuk Yud Gimel, the Tmei Meis directly touched the Shemen. Ella, if Shmuel, if Levi will hold like Rav, which Rav? From Daf Tezayin. What does Rav say? The Amar Dachan Mamish, that not only is it not Mitkamei Acherim, but those liquids are themselves not Tamei. So Heiche Mishkachas Law, in Pasuk Yud Gimel, how can Shmuel say that they gave the correct answer? No, they gave the wrong answer. Gewaldig. 1 second. What about Rav? So that we learned yesterday. Rav holds that this whole leniency of Yossi ben Yoezer is only a mashkin beis mit bechaya. He was only speaking about the water and blood. He wasn't speaking about wine and oil. Gewaldig. So the Gemara says, Enochanami. So it must be that al karchach. We're speaking now about Levi. Kishmuel Svirulei. That Levi holds like Shmuel. Let's go weiter. Now, furthermore, Shmuel who says that in Pasuk Yud Beis, they were not wrong. Why were they not wrong? We said because Pasuk Yud Beis, then he is speaking about a Chamishi. Very good. Well, Shmuel, Tani Mashki Beis mit Bechaya. Not only do they acquire Tumah, but they can impart Tumah. That's why Shmuel needed to explain that the only reason why they were wrong was because the Shemen was a Chamishi. That was their mistake. But if Taka, he would have asked them about the fourth, then they would have known it's Tamei. Hashlishi could make it a V. Because the Yossi ben Yoezer's was Bechlal not about blood, oil, and wine. But if Saba like Levi, if Shmuel would hold like Levi, and that Levi says that the leniency that Yossi ben Yoezer was referring to was even on the liquids that goes on the mad behind the mizbeach. According to that, wine cannot impart tumah. Period. Right? Oil cannot impart tumah. So why did Shmuel have to say that we're speaking about a Chamishi? No, they don't need to be wrong when you're speaking about a Chamishi. My idiot doli avad chamishi. This is answering your point, Danny. No, but Shmuel said that even if the pasuk would have been sheni, guys, Rashi takes out the vav. It's beautiful. Even if the wine would have been a sheni, and the wine would have touched the shemen, which outside the Beis Hamikdash, that would have become a shlishi, even that wouldn't have happened. Even a sheni making a shlishi would not have happened because these liquids cannot impart tumah. So again, indeed, it must be that kirav svirolei. Wow. In other words, Shmuel must hold like Rav that what? Shmuel holds like Rav that Yosi ben Yoezer is only speaking about mashkin base, the butchering place. Beautiful. Okay. Now everything fits. Now we're going to go. Tanya Kavasi the Rav, Tanya Kavasi the Levi. This is regarding again Yosi ben Yoezer. Tanya Kavasi the Levi. Right, it's amazing how sometimes we go Rishon, and Achron. The Gemara speaks about it. And sometimes Mehechad, the Salik, wherever the Tana, wherever the Gemara mentioned the last statement, from there we take on. So where do we find that a Braisa that clearly holds that the Dachan in the Beis Hamikdash is even on Mad Bechayim? Says in a Braisa, Hadam, Vehayayin, Vehashemen, Vehamayim. In other words, Mashke, Beis, Mad Bechaya, that's Mamish Levi. If they became Tami Bifnim, and therefore they didn't become Tami, because that's the leniency. Even if you took them bachutz, they remain tohoiden. And like Rashi says 5 lines before the bottom of the Amid, guys, let's remember that things that are consecrated, right, that in the Azara, if they are taken out of the Azara, they become pasul. Let's call up psul yoitza. So says that what this rice is being mechadesh is that if you have these liquids, even though they became psul yoitza, but they still have within them the leniency of dachan, because since they became tamei bifnim, and at the moment of them becoming tamei, we apply this leniency of the Beis Hamikdash, whether it is that they themselves don't become tamei or that they cannot impart on tumah, even if now they lose their status of kodesh because they were yotzei, psul yotzei, but they still remain with the leniency of dachan. However, says the Braisa, if they became tamei before they became holy, they became tamei bachutz, and now you bring them inside, since to begin with they were never consecrated because they were tamei to begin with, you can't say now that they are inside they don't impart tumah. They will impart tumah. They will impart tumah. That's even if mashkin only imparts midrabanan still. Yeah, the Chachamim wanted to limit tumah in the Beis Hamikdash, but if there's such a case where you had a water that's tamei, some Chacham brought it into the Beis Hamikdash and it touched something else, it's going to be metamet. Okay, so what do we see over here clearly? Thinking about Eini. First of all, that's already a raya like Levi. But now let's challenge the Braisa. Eini. V'ha'amar Rabbi Shua ben Levi, mashke beis midvachaya lo yamru dachan ela b'mekayman. And the Gemara is therefore saying the kasha my lav lema'ute, that if nitmu b'fnim, but if it's now outside, now it's no longer dachan. No, says the Gemara, answers the Gemara loy. Lema'ute, all Rabbi Shua ben Levi meant to emphasize was lema'ute, that if it became tamei b'chutz, even though it's now b'fnim, it's too late. Frek the Gemara, it says bim mekayman. Guys, think about this. This implies that if the moment they're removed, it's not bim mekayman, and therefore it is metamei. So the Gemara says no. Hachi ka'amar lo amru dachan elo shenitmu bim mekayman. But indeed, if nitmu bim mekayman, even if you take it outside, it will still have in it this dachan of the Beis Hamikdash. Now, Tanya Kavase the Rav. What did Rav say? That the Yosi ben Yoezer was only referring to.
Rabbi,
yes.
Wait, just where we're up to right now, we said
Yes.
this Tanya Kavasei de Levi.
Yes.
So the reason why it doesn't go according to Rav is because we're seeing that clearly that the mashkin are tamei, right? And he would say
No, because the Braisa mentions not only mayim and dam, yayin and shemen. The Braisa is telling you the leniency of dachan even on the items that go on the altar.
Okay.
Look at the 4 things that Braisa mentions: dam, yayin, shemen, and mayim. That they are dachan. That's not like Rav. Rav held that Yosi ben Yoezer was never speaking about yayin and shemen. Now, it doesn't refute, just the guys remember, Rav can argue even with the Braisa, but this is better. The Rav, Hadam Ba'amayim. In other words, this Braisa only mentions, guys, we're in the last line of the Amid, the liquids that are used in the butchering place in the Holy Temple. Mashki base, mid b'chayim. Now we're going to learn another nuance. That shenitmu, if these liquids become tamei, now this is significant. Whether they become tummy when they are in a keli, whether they become
Rabbi, according to Rabbi, how did they become tummy? These liquids.
A sheretz touched it.
I thought we said according to Yosef ben Yezer, they can't become tummy.
That's a machlokes. What he's saying, Dachen, guys. That's the whole thing. It's a puzzle here.
When according to Rab's explanation was that it can't become tummy and it can't give tummy. So how does this whole, even if it's all four, isn't that not according to Rab? I don't understand. How are these liquids becoming tummy? Bifnim.
According to Rab, if a sheretz touches blood, if a sheretz touches yayin, it becomes tummy. Whether it becomes tummy on a doiraisa or on a darabana level, that's another machlokes tanoim. It becomes tummy. The leniency was only regarding water and blood. What are you struggling with?
I understand. I'm just saying that we're saying that this first price is according to Levi because it mentions the four liquids together. There's a leniency. And the limit of Rav was that that he separated the two liquids of the butchering place from the liquids that were on the mizbeach. Right?
Yezer was not speaking about the liquids on the mizbeach. Yes.
Okay, but I'm asking. Forget about lumping the four of them together. I'm saying according to Rav's explanation of Yosef ben Yezer, that liquids of the butchering place cannot become tamei. How did they become tamei over here?
Who said it became tamei? Who said it became tamei? I don't understand. What are you asking?
That's the brisa of Levi. It says hadam v'yayim sheben mashke. These are. It says that if they were contaminated inside,
it means if a source of tamei touched it. And we are applying the leniency of whatever. And guys, don't forget there's a machlekes what dachan means. Either dachan means that it's pure itself, that's another machlekes. Or dachan means it can only not impart. Whatever dachan means, that leniency is said not only if they are inside, but once they were already inside, even if you take them outside, they still remain dachan, whatever dachan means. Guys, we have to move. Let's go back to it. The next brayse is, think of us that up. Hadam b'hamayim. Here we're only mentioning mashki beis mid b'chaya. Now again, this is important. The Tanach holds that they are tohoiden. Very good. Which is exactly how Rab learned Yosef ben Yezer. Now what's this? Bein bekalim, bein bekarka. So now daf yud zayin amud beis. Now we're going to start quoting another sheet. Now we already learned Rab Shimon on the top of daf tezayin. We're going to repeat it in a moment. Rabbi Shimon Omer, like this. If the liquid is bekalim, right, then tameim. Only if the liquids is bekarka in the Beis Hamikdash, that is where they are tohoiden. What are we talking about? Let's read inside the Rashi. Rabbi Shimon Omer bekalim tameim says Rashi that Rabbi Shimon letaime that he said on top of daf tezayin. That's how we began everything. Tumas mashkin de oiraisa afilu l'tamachedin. Everything we're learning is based on this premise that anything that acquires tuma or that also imparts tuma on a de oiraisa level will be just as tamei in the Beis Hamikdash. In the Beis Hamikdash, all the Yosef ben Yezer was speaking about is that whatever is only tuma, the Rabbanan was waived. So let's go. Now, Rabbi Meir was the one that began on Daf Tezayin to say that liquids, latama achedim, is always midrabanan. But then we had in the Braisa two other groups. We had Rabbi Yehuda, that we'll get to later. He was the biggest machmer. He holds that liquids impart tuma to everything, both to foods and to kalim. And Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Shimon say, lo'oichlem tameim, lekalim tohoidim. So now let's read it inside. He said before is that tumas mashkin deorais. Rabbi Shimon says that mashkin has the power to be metama oichlin, which is a raya that mashkin are mitame, they impart even doiraisa. So therefore, the mashkin base mitbachayo lematzu rabbanan litahirin. How can the Chachamim say that these liquids won't impart tuma even to oichlin? They can't do that. However, he agrees that Yosef ben Yezer said something correct, but he limited what Yosef ben Yezer said to only waters that are not imparting tumah. In the Beis Hamikdash, forget about wine and oil, will always impart tumah. Even the water and the blood, it's only water, not blood, only water while they are in the ground. What does that mean? Look inside the Rashi. Fourth line. What are we talking about? Amayim. It only goes on water, not on blood. And there's a minimum amount. There has to be at least a revius of water on the ground. What is benefited? Gavaldik Rashi. Rashi says that Rab Shimon holds that if you have a revius of mayim on the ground, mida oiraisa, it already has a status of a mikvah. A mikvah does not become tamei. So for such waters to become tamei, which it does, that's only on a rabbinic level, because midrabanan, that's not a good mikvah. Now Rashi goes into details. How can you say that a revius of mayim on the ground on a biblical level is a good mikvah? Rashi says, yeah. The Torah never gave the amount of 40 sa. The Torah did say that when you go into the mikvah, all of your flesh must be submerged. A person doesn't fit into a revius of mayim. But if you want to toivel kalim, tefillas kalim is the oiraisa. For example, a machat, a sewing needle, tzinoides, a certain combing forks that they used on begadim, very small instruments that you could midoiraisa put it in this revius of mayim and make it pure. So there is a rule that we have in Parsha Shemini that waters that are the mikvah, they don't become tamei. Now, really, waters on the ground of one revius midrabanan is not good for kalim. Today, when you go to a kalim mikvah, there has to be 40 sa. That's only midrabanan. So Rab Shimon limits the dachan of Yosi ben Yoezer, not only not to yayin and shemen. To begin with, it's only on mashkin beis mitmachaya, but not even on all mashkin beis mitmachaya. That's the Rab Shimon on the top. Tanach says, water and blood. He holds, based on his lishitasai, that liquids can impart tumah midoiraisa. So the only leniency you can have in the Beis Hamikdash is finding something that is only tamei midrabanan. That refers to a revius of mayim in the karka. There's a big machlekes rishonim. Are we saying that if you have a revius of mayim on the ground, that midoiraisa it's a mikvah, even if they are mayim she'uvim, or only if they fell there directly from the heavens? That's a big machlekes. And whichever one the shita will is, so that's going to work. That will be the limitation of Rabbi Shimon. Gavaldi. Now the
that applies to blood and oil as well, or
blood and oil, of course not. Blood and oil are b'chlal. They were never excluded from the dinah derabanan. Period. The whole heter was only on water and blood. Water and blood heter can only be for wherever it's not acquiring to midoraisa. Rab Shimon holds that mashkin are metame oicholin midoraisa. So the Yosef ben Yezer was only speaking about bakarka and an revius of mayim. And according to some shitas, that was not mayim she'uvim. Now we're having a third opinion, which is from an Amoira, which is going to be very difficult because everything we learned until now was based on the premise Chachamim cannot abrogate, they cannot nullify a din Torah in the Beis Hamikdash. Amar Rav Papa, no, afilu lamanda Amar tumas mashkin de oiraisa. Still mashki beis mitachayim mistamas dachan. We'll see the bach over here. The leniency is still set over there, and Hilchas Gemirullah. God, halacha l'meishem Sinai, that mashkin beis mitmachaya in the Beis Hamikdash are dachan. Amalei Rafunim Reida Rav Nassim Rav Papa. Hold on, that can't be, because when we introduced Yosi ben Yoezer, it wasn't the following brisa. It was when we were trying to point out the stira in Shitas Rabbi Elazar, the Elahad Amar Rabbi Elazar, that ain't tuma l'mashkin kolikar, ain't tuma. And what was his proof? What kind of raya do you have? That doesn't make sense. You're telling me that no, that the mashkin can be tamei midoiraisa, but in the Beis Hamikdash, Hashem told Moshe Rabbeinu that mashkin beis mitmachaya dachan. So that refutes Rav Papa. Amalei Ravina leRavashi is not a teretz; it's a second question. For her, Rab Shimon, the Amar Tumas Mashkin the Oiraisa, as we learned on Daf Tez Zayin, that Rabbi Yosef and Rab Shimon Oimrim, that Mashkin the Oiraisa doesn't mean it imparts Tumah to everything. I know that. If Mashkin touches Kalim, and you have a suffix whether it touched it or not, Mashkin being Metama Kalim, according to Rabbi Yosef and Rab Shimon, is only Midrabanan, so suffix Darabanan is Tohirin. But if liquids maybe touched oichlin or maybe not, they said you have to be tameim because they hold that mashkin couldn't par tuma. Ve'hachin, nevertheless, ka'amar Rabbi Shimon, that bekalim tameim only bekarka tohirim. And here again, ve'il chasei mali bekalim mali bekarka. Again, if you're telling me that Hashem can say that in the Beis Hamikdash there's no tumas mashkin, so that's another challenge on Papa. And here, kasha. Not refuted, that Rambam noch paskins like Rav Papa, but these are problems on Rav Papa. Amar Rav Papa, had the Amrat bekarka tohirim. Another detail, he's telling you, Shitas Rabbi Shimon, as we just read inside the Rashi, that they only were lenient bekarka, that's only water, not blood. Because we have to find, Rabbi Shimon, waters that biblically are not tamei. Rabbi Shimon holds mashkin, acquire tuma, mashkin in part tuma doiraisa. So it's only water and not blood. And even by the mayim, lo yamaran elo dahaverevi'is on the ground. Since the chazi lahat bolbei mechatem v'tzinoiros, since you can toivel midoiraisa, not midrabanan. Midrabanan, you always need mem saw even for small kalim. But since the doiraisa, it fits in there, a needle, a spinning fork. If it doesn't even have a revius, that means that even on the doiraisa level, these waters cannot be called mikvei mayim. So then they'll remain tummy even in the Beis Hamikdash. Okay. Now we're going to go to the third shita, even though we're going out of the order of Rabbi Yehuda. What did Rabbi Yehuda say on Daf Tez Zayin? Rabbi Yehuda said la koil tummy. Rabbi Yehuda holds liquids acquire tuma mido ayraisa. Liquids in par tuma mido ayraisa. Do you know to what? Not only to foods, but even to kalim. And therefore, he holds that if you have a suffix, you have liquids that are tummy, and someone threw it in a room, and it hit either this pile of food or that pile of food, or it either hit this keli or that keli. One of them is tummy. One of them is, you don't know which one. And here we're going to imply the rule, suffix doiraisa l'chumra, being that Rabbi Yehuda says that mashkin are mitame, midoiraisa, they'll both be tummy. That was the shita of lakoil tummy. Omar Mar, that's what we just quoted. Rabbi Yehuda omer lakoil tummy. In fact, the Gemara remember the Saba Rabbi Yehuda that tumas mashkin latame, even kalim, is the oiraisa. How can that be? I have a contradiction. Rabbi Yehuda, v'hotan, we learned in the Mishnah in Kalim. Kol ha'kelim sheyesh lam achorayim v'toich, any utensil that has an exterior and a interior. Now, what I'm saying now is not negaya to understand this Mishnah, but it has to be spoken because we're going to quote this other times. And there is a Daf Meir here. And just know that this Braisa is not speaking about any keli. Now, any keli has a achorayim and a toich. Look at my cup. There is a toich and an achorayim. We're going to be speaking about kalim that could be turned inside out, the four examples, and therefore even the outer part of the keli can also become the receptacle if you turn it fadreyet inside out. That detail is not negeya to our sugya, but that's what the Mishnah is speaking about. A keli that has a achorayim v'toich, that even the achorayim could become a toich. And what will that be? Cotton pillows, all soft items, or kasasais, cushions, or sacks, sakin, or baham martzufin are leather bags. Okay, but let's just focus on an inner and an outer. So says the Mishnah like this: Nitmu toichai, if the source of tuma touches the outside, then not only is the outside tummy is tummy, then nitmu gabai, then the inside is also tummy. I'm sorry, gabai means the outside. If the inside is tummy, the outside is tummy. Nitma gabai, if the source of tuma touches the outside, says the Mishnah, loy nitmu toichai. What are we talking about, and why would it be so? I'll explain in a moment. But let's first finish reading the Mishnah. Amar Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda is explaining, he's not arguing. Remember we learned that? In Eruvin. It's not a machlekes. He's explaining, shenitmu machmas mashkin. When do we say that if the gaboy becomes tummy, the inside does not become tummy? That's if the tumah was coming from liquids. But if a sheretz touched either the inside or the outside, so as we spoke out in our introduction, and just to repeat it, this is important. Whenever there's a tumah doiraisa, there's no such a thing that only the outside is tummy, only the inside is tummy. If it's tummy, it's tummy. But whenever a keli is only tummy on a rabbinic level, and there's many tumas that are banan, the Chachamim had a fear that if truma were to have contact with this keli, with this rabbinic source, people might, God forbid, burn the truma. If kachim has contact, they're going to burn the kachim. Because taka, when truma becomes tamei, the only hana you can have is from burning it. When kachim becomes tamei, you may not even have hana, and you can't leave it. You have to burn it. But if kachim or truma are tohoiden mida'iraisa, even though they're tamei midrabanan, which means you can't eat it, but you can't burn it because you're dishonoring, you're not guarding the truma or the kachim. So they wanted for people to have a heker to remember that there's a truma derabanan. So that's exactly what Rabbi Yehuda is trying to say, that if the tumah came from liquids, clearly you see that Rabbi Yehuda holds that mashkin cannot be metame kelim the oiraisa, only the rabbanon. That's why Rabbi Yehuda differentiates that if the source of tumah was a sheretz, the oiraisa, then the keli becomes a rishoin, sheretz is an av, the keli rishoin, then there's no difference, right? But if the mashkin, if the tumah comes from mashkin, there is where we say that if the mashkin touches the inside, then everything becomes tummy. But they made one heker that if the mashkin touches the outside, then the inside remains tar. But these alkadaitach that tumas mashkin l'tami kelim, like we just learned on the Braisa and after Zayin, is the oiraisa is mali nitma machmas mashkin mali nitma machmas sheretz. It's both tuma de oiraisa. Wow, this is a bomba kasha, and indeed Amar Rabbi Yehuda Shmuel, it must be chazah by Rabbi Yehuda ala seder. Meaning that now that we have the Mishnah in Kalim, Rabbi Yehuda now at this point held that mashkin can only be mekama oichlin midoiraisa, but it cannot be metama Kalim midoiraisa. Now that's a stretch. Ravina Amar lo oilam lehadar. Elama, do you know what mashkin is Rabbi Yehuda referring to in the Mishnah in Kalim? Only b'mashkin haboyim machmas yodayim. Guys, yodayim, tumas yodayim, is a sheni midrabanan. Let me go further. If my hands touch mashkin, first of all, my hands to begin with are only tamim midrabanan. If it touches liquids, there's another midrabanan. The liquids become, it's called a tchila. They become a rishon midrabanan. So if the mashkin themselves are only tamim midrabanan, and those mashkin touched a keli, that's the Mishnah in Kalim. The reason why Rabbi Yehuda is making that heked is not because mashkin can only be metame kelim midrabanan. Mashkin, if they are tamim midoiraisa, they can impart tuma also midoiraisa. But the case in Kalim is that the mashkin themselves are only tamim midrabanan. Here, meaning on daf tezayin, when Rabbi Yehuda, there was a suffix, you had mashkin, you strew it on kalim, you have a suffix. Rabbi Yehuda says that they're both tamei. Suffix deoraisa was mashkin that became tamei machmas sheretz. Sheretz is an av. The mashkin is tamei mido oirais on a level of a rishon. Now I know that we have a rule that ein adam v'kalim can become a sheni, but that's a problem with this approach. But the Gemara is not addressing that problem. At least the waters are tamei mido oiraisa. But the Gemara is going to refute Ravina. If that's the case, the tani over there in Kalim. But if the tumah is coming to a kalim from a sheretz, then even if the sheretz touch the outside, even the inside is tamei. Why? I'll give you a better differentiation. That is where we differentiate, because the mashkin themselves is only midrabanan. Since the mashkin are tamei midoraisa, according to Rabbi Yehuda, according to you, that he never changed his mind, and mashkin are mitame, even midoraisa, dit matoichay, nit megaboy, and that would have been a much better b'medavaram amurim, and therefore we refute Ravina, aside of the question that we mentioned, that liquid, that Adam and Kalim cannot become tame on a doiraisa level. That what that chazan boy Rabbi Yehuda. Let's hop around another few lines over here. Now that we accept that Rabbi Yehuda changed his mind, but whether liquids can impart tuma to oichalin, will Rabbi Yehuda at least there not agree with Rabbi Meir? But yes, like the other two Tanoim on the Braisa and Daf Tezayin, can Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Shimon, Sfira lay that what? That Tumas Mashkin Letamei Oicholin is Midoiraisa, Or now that we say that he changed his mind, Dilma legamri hadarbe, and now Rabbi Yehuda will agree with the one who he normally argues with Rabbi Meir, that holds that Tumas Mashkin Latami Achedim, any Achedim is only midrabanan. So what is now the shita of Rabbi Yehuda? So Amar Rav Nachman by Yitzchak Tashumak, I'll show you. And here we're quoting a Mishnah in Parah. Now again, like we mentioned, one of the paradox of the Parah Duma is that someone who needs to be sprinkled with the mei chatos, with waters in which the ashes of the red heifer were mixed into, that will bring apart a tahara. But if someone stam touches the mei chatos for no reason, mei chatos are tamei midoiraisa on a level of an av, and whoever has contact with mei chatos becomes a rishon. Now, what happens, says the Mishnah, if you have a cow, sheshasasa mei chatos, that it drank mei chatos, put a comma. You know what happened? Nothing yet, because a living being cannot become tummy. But now add someone shechted the cow, or the cow, someone shechted the cow. Someone shechted the cow, if the shechita happened within 24 hours, explained the Rishonim, of the cow drinking the mechatos, which means that the water was not yet fully absorbed in the body of the cow, now the animal is not living. So does the av, the mechatos, which is an av, is it mitame? Is it metame the cow? Says the Mishnah, yes, it does. Besarei tame. Now, guys, you remember from Chulin, there was no hechsher. There was a hechsher. The dam shchita was machsher. The shchita is machsher. Tzvika, don't run away. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, daf yutches. No, I just batlu b'mayel. Batlu b'mayel means, says Rashi, that since you may not use this mechatos, so therefore, and why, by the way, why can't you use it? There's a nuance that Rashi doesn't mention, because there's a din that you must guard the mechatos. Once it went into the animal's innards, it was not guarded. So it's invalidated. If it's invalidated, it loses its status of an av. Okay? So now asks the Gemara, Gavaldik Kasha. The Isal Kadaitach, that only Mekalim Hudahadarbe, but Mashkin can still be Metama, food or foods. Then the Rabbi Yehuda doesn't make sense. Why is Rabbi Yehuda saying that the meat is not tamei? It should be tamei. It should not be tamei on a rishon, but the meat should be tamei on a sheni. And yes, chulin can become a sheni midoiraisa. Why would the meat become a? How does a sheni come? I'll say it by heart. If you have liquids, these liquids used to be an av, right? Mechatos. Even when it loses its status of an av, but it's still liquid. So we say the water's touched itself. So now these liquids cannot go from being an oven to completely tahar. If mashkin can be metama oichlin or mashkin, then it touched itself. What does it become? It becomes a rishon. And now the rishon is touching the cow, so the cow should become a sheni. Moididik. I get it. That you're saying it wasn't guarded. It's no longer an av. It can't make the meat into a rishon. Fine, but tumakala mihi nitamu, because it touched itself. Is a raya that Rabbi Yehuda holds that the whole tuma of mashkin to be metama oichlin or mashkin is only midrabanan, and in such an unusual case, the Chachamim didn't make any gzeidim. That must be the answer. So we're going to leave over here with the proof that Rabbi Yehuda even changed his mind, and he holds like Rabbi Meir. A lot more to be continued. Gavaldik. Just to see over here that a living being cannot become tummy, even if there's tumah inside of us, which is a beinanim. We have tumah inside of us. Amalept, then it has no effect. If a person, beruchni, is God forbid, has a moment of not alive, then the tumah is matam of the person. To be continued.
Oh yeah.
Guys, one more daf of mashkin, and then two more daf of tumantara. This is so good. It's going to be such a pity, so boring next week. Brought to you by